Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the IndieZone here on YouTube. My name is Kathy. On December 6th, 2024, in a document that was just released today, December 12th, 2024, the state of Idaho filed a stipulated motion to seal the state's objection and exhibits to the defendants, that's Mr. Kohberger's motion to suppress and memorandum in support. And this is regarding, as the case title tells us, the Pennsylvania search warrant for the property on Lambsden Drive in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and statements made. So here the state of Idaho is responding to and objecting to the motion to suppress. What is a motion to suppress? It is to suppress evidence that the defendant is saying should not be permitted to continue to be allowed to exist in this case. So here we see it's an objection. The state is telling the judge, we object to this. We want you to deny this motion, Your Honor. But the problem here is in learning what bases, what grounds the state of Idaho is raising is like so many documents in this case. It's not on the public docket. It is under seal. And a stipulation means that the state contacted the defense and said, look, we want to file these items under seal, and the defense is joining them. It's stipulated to. They're not going to object to the state of Idaho's request to keep this supporting information, document, and arguments off the public docket to maintain it under seal. Let's look at this objection, and it gives us the reasons why the state of Idaho is asking that these documents stay off of the public docket. It begins on page 1, as all motions, responses, replies do. It will tell you who the party is, and they are coming before the court by and through their counsel. So here it is the state of Idaho by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, and hereby moves the court pursuant to, and here comes the legal authority that they're citing, Idaho Court Administrative Rule, ICAR 32G1, and Idaho Code, this is a statute, section 74124, for an order sealing the state's objection and exhibits to the defendant's motion to suppress and memorandum in support regarding the Pennsylvania search warrant for the address, ladies and gentlemen, on Lambsden Drive, Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and statements made herein. Now, before we get to the reasons why they are citing good cause for keeping this information out of the public realm. The reason why they're citing to this address in Lambsden Drive, Albrightsville, is because on the day of Mr. Kohberger's arrest in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that's where he was that day, on the 30th of December 2022, when law enforcement arrested him. He was at his parents' home. That is this address in Albrightsville that is cited to in this filing. Statements made, if you look at the moving motion, the defense's motion that this response is now objecting to, there is a big, thick, black line through several words that the defense says we understand that this statement may have been made. We don't see it anywhere that it was recorded or any entry of it in the court paperwork that's filed, but in an abundance of caution, what they're doing, the defense now, is having that statement thrown out. That's part of what this motion that's being responded to now by the state of Idaho states. So now if we continue at the bottom of page 1, the state now says they want these items to remain under seal, off the public docket, ladies and gentlemen, because release or disclosure, that is release to the public or disclosure to the public, would, not could, not might, would. We go to page 2. Number 1, interfere with enforcement proceedings. 2, deprive a person of a right to a fair trial or an impartial adjudication. 2, constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. 3, disclose the identity of a confidential source, and or 4, disclose investigative techniques and procedures. The undersigned has contacted the defense and they have no objection to this motion. The state respectfully requests that the court seal from public disclosure, and they give the title of the motion. Again, states objection and exhibits to defendant's motion to suppress and memorandum in support regarding the Pennsylvania search warrant for this address, Lambsden Drive, Albrightsville, and statements made herein. And then they recite the legal authority that's cited on page number 1. Now let's look at these 5 objections. They are misnumbered. This is not the first time that this has happened. The state has raised these 5 numbered reasons. Good cause for sealing these documents, keeping them off the public docket, misnumbered like this as if it's been cut and pasted. Either that or they have, this is at least 6 times that I have seen this in this case, where coincidentally they're misnumbering it in this manner. But let's look at these reasons. Number 1, interfere with enforcement proceedings. I think that means law enforcement proceedings. That if these information, these documents were made public, that there could be some interference with enforcement proceedings. But there's no explanation why or how that could possibly be when they say that it would interfere with enforcement proceedings. Same with number 2, deprive a person of a right to a fair trial or impartial adjudication. Unquestionably, Mr. Kohberger has a constitutional right to a fair trial and an impartial adjudication. That is his due process privileges, but there is no supporting details. There's no affidavit, for example, from Mr. Thompson saying this is why, if this information was released to the public, it would interfere with Mr. Kohberger's right to a fair trial or an impartial adjudication. The second, number 2, constitute an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Again, there's no supporting details how or why this is possible. The next, interesting, disclose the identity of a confidential source. Confidential source. This has come up time and time again in this case, and I know that there are certain members of the true crime community, certain podcasters, certain independent journalists that have debated whether or not there's a confidential source that might have either gone to law enforcement or be approached by law enforcement who has provided some information that led to Mr. Kohberger's arrest. Or it could be what Judge John Judge stated in the order compelling the state of Idaho to release the IgG DNA, or at least some of the information that they sought regarding IgG DNA. You'll recall that in that very long order of October 2023, Judge Judge ordered that information on this family tree that was developed and that apparently led law enforcement to Mr. Kohberger, that the names on that family tree was not to be disclosed. Judge was very clear on that point. He wanted those people's names to be protected. And even for a while, the defense was not allowed to release some of this information that they got regarding the IgG DNA to their investigators, to their experts. The defense had to go back and ask for that permission from Judge. So the court has been very, very concerned that those people's identities be not released to third parties, much less the public at large. And Judge referred to those people on the family tree as informants. He said, maybe they're not informants in the historical sense, the way that you might think. Someone sees someone breaking into a home, they're a confidential informant, their identity is not released, they provide information to law enforcement. Sometimes there is a request made by a state attorney or the state to the judge asking. It could be a district attorney, it could be state attorney, depending on what state or commonwealth it is, will go to the judge, and in return for cooperation in maybe a larger case, the state attorney or district attorney will ask the court for some leniency, cut off some time on the person, the confidential informants. Let's just say they were arrested for something else. That is a traditional confidential informant. So it's unclear whether the state here is talking about a traditional confidential informant or these informants that Judge referenced on the family tree. If you would like to review this document, I provided the information where you can go on the State of Idaho website, where they have various cases that the public is interested in, including the Kohberger case. And you can scroll down to the area where Mr. Kohberger's records are for State of Idaho versus Kohberger, and you can read this document for yourself. This will now conclude this episode of the IndieZone here on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us here today.